Okay, this is part 3 of our discussion of the phonics of vowels. All the stuff on this slide you do not need to know. It is relevant to the discussion in the forthcoming slides, but nothing you need to memorize. It's just helpful to have this awareness, and I think you'll find it interesting. Hope you'll find it interesting. I find it interesting. So this is the way that vowels differ in American English dialects, and this is just a few examples from regions in the United States that have variations in the way they pronounce vowels. There are many other regions. I'm just giving 3 examples here to illustrate the difference between vowel pronunciations in various dialects, but there are a whole bunch more regions that also have vowel differences in their pronunciations. Also, if you think about all the different places where English is spoken in the world, British English, Australian English, South African English, all of those places that use English have very different vowel pronunciations in those dialects. So here's just a few examples within the United States. There is the Eastern New England English, what we think of as the Boston accent. My daughter used to live in Boston, so riding in the elevator, I would hear this all the time. I'm not going to try to imitate because I'm not good at a Boston accent, but you've probably heard it in movies or if you visited there yourself. It's a rounded ah sound, like in the word lot and rod. It would sound more like the way British people say those words if you heard it with a Bostonian accent. Then there's the Inland or Mountain Southern accent or dialect, which Arkansas would fall into that dialectical pronunciation. Again, I'm not even good at this one. I'm sure many of you could use this dialectical pronunciation if you would like to give it a try. One of the markers for the Southern dialect is the pin-pen merger, which is where the I and E sound identical for my ears and my pronunciation. Those are 2 different short vowel sounds, but for the Southern dialect, words that end in or an or im or m are pronounced with the same vowel sound. So bin instead of ben, or I say them differently and I can hear them differently. That may or may not be true for you. There's also what's called vowel breaking, and this is why the Southern dialect is sometimes called a Southern drawl, because the vowel sounds are drawn out and actually like turned into 2 different vowel sounds together, which is called a diphthong. We'll talk more about that later. But in words with short vowel sounds like cat and dress, the vowel sound is elongated into 2 sounds. So cat would become, well, I don't think I can even try it. Cat. It's kind of like a 2 vowel sounds in one. I bet many of you can do it, but I can't. And the other distinction in the Southern dialect is that vowels in words like thought and dog are diphthongized, which means, again, they have a glider, an elongated vowel that's actually 2 vowel sounds. You can pause the video and think about those for a moment if you want to give them a try, because some of you could probably actually make those Southern dialectical distinctions in vowels. The dialect that I speak is the Western American accent. The strongest marker of this accent is the cot-cot merger. So to me, cot and cot sound the same to a northerner. They wouldn't. I can actually hear the difference, but unless I'm really thinking about it, I don't say the difference. Those words and words like thought, paw, and caught all sound the same as the vowel sound in not, cod, and rock. So that ah sound versus the more open ah. Again, I'm not very good at it because I speak the Western American dialect of English. So that's just for your interest, but it again points out why vowels are so much trickier than consonants. And for English language learners who bring vowel sounds from their native languages, it becomes even more complicated than that. So vowels are just very, very tricky business. We are going to talk about 5 different vowel sounds, vowel patterns, the short pattern, the long vowel pattern, diphthongs, R-controlled vowels, and the schwa. So we'll talk about each of those patterns. I also want to point out the vowel letters or graphemes that represent the vowel sounds or phonemes. So the letters that represent vowel sounds are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Y, as we learned before, can make a consonant sound Y, but it can also make a vowel sound. Typically, the Y, when it acts as a vowel, is going to make either the long E sound, or the long I sound. So, for example, if the Y is at the end of a multisyllable word, it typically makes the long E sound E, like in happy. So question number 1 on your quiz is to think of another word where the Y makes the long E sound, like in happy. So pause the video and think of another word with a long E sound, then resume the video. Okay, so in a short word that ends in a Y, like a one-syllable word that ends in a Y, the Y typically makes the long I sound, like in the word cry. In the word time, where Y is the medial or middle sound, it's also making the long I, but that's not always the case. Time is an example. The spice time is an example of a word where the Y makes the long I sound. It does that because it has a silent E marker at the end, which we'll talk more about later. But a consistent generalization is that a Y at the end of a one-syllable word is going to make the long I sound, I. So pause the video and think of another word where the Y makes the long I sound, I. And as we've already seen, Y can be a medial vowel sound. It can come in the middle of the word. In time, it made the long I sound. In Jim, it makes a short I sound, I. So it can make long and short I sounds as well when it's an internal vowel. This is less typical, so don't really worry about it. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And you should note that Y can be in the middle of a word, and it's still making a vowel sound. Also, just to point out that we can have single letters that make a vowel sound, which we've seen above, or we can have vowel clusters where there's 2 or more vowels together that make a vowel sound, either digraphs or diphthongs, which we'll talk more about later. There's also weird combinations of vowels and consonants, like IGH, that make a vowel sound. And I think this is supposed to be number 3 here, where you pause and think of another word that has a vowel consonant cluster or a vowel sound. So pause and write that down. Okay, we're going to start by talking about short vowel sounds, because the short sound of a vowel is the most common vowel sound. When syllables end in a consonant, the vowel is usually short, and we call that a closed syllable. It's like the consonant closes the door on the syllable. So a CVC word, that stands for consonant, vowel, consonant. You could also have a vowel consonant syllable that ends in a consonant. And when it ends in a consonant, the syllable usually has a short vowel sound. The same is true when it ends in a double consonant. That's even more reliable. It's almost always short if the syllable or word ends in a double consonant. And that's why when we add ed or ing, we often double the final consonant to keep that short sound. Uh-oh, I just noticed that I guess I didn't have that IGH word on the quiz, so sorry. Cross off number 3. This is your new number 3, a short A sound. So the short A sound is a, like in apple, pan, mat. So for number 3, think of another word that has a short A sound. Pause the video and think of a word with a as the vowel sound. Okay, now short E sound, like in elephant, pen, mat. If you have a southern dialect, you may not hear a real distinction in between pe, en, and p, I, in, short or short I. But see if you can listen for the short E sound, as in elephant, pen, and mat, short E. Pause the video and think of another word with the short E, sound. The short sound of I is I. So I, short I, short E. If you have a southern dialect, you may not hear the difference between pin and pan again, but insect, pin, and it all have the short I sound. So for number 5, pause the video and think of another word with the short I sound, I. Then we have the short O sound, as in octopus, upon, stop, upon, octopus, octopus. In octopus, think of the first O, octopus. So again, because I have a Western dialect, I don't really hear the difference between and aw. I don't pronounce it differently typically. But there is a distinction between those sounds. I'm not going to ask you to make that distinction, mainly because I don't make it myself, and I think most people in our region of the United States don't make that distinction. I haven't heard any of you make that distinction in your speaking. So we're going to think of the short ah. as in octopus, upon, and sta-a-op. So pause the video, and for number 6, think of another word with the short O or ah sound. The short U sound is as in umbrella, punt, sun, country. So in country, we have an unusual spelling for the sound. That's a holdover from when the vowel sound in country was pronounced differently, but we just say it with a short U, sound. So pause the video and think of another word with the short U, sound. Then there's the sound which is called the schwa sound, but it's very similar to the short U. It's just an unaccented syllable. It's the vowel sound in an unaccented syllable, so it could be any of the vowel letters, but it just makes an unaccented, more like an syllable, like about, taken, accident, family. You don't even really hear that vowel sound that the short I makes, but you can tell it's a separate syllable. Freedom, industry. So think of another word with a schwa sound. Pause the video and write that down for number 8. Now we're going to talk about long vowels. So the long vowel sound is when the vowel is saying its name, A, E, I, O, U. The sound is called a long vowel because it's held longer, but it's totally different than the short vowel sound. It's not just the short sound held longer. It's a very different sound, but it typically is held longer. And again, the vowel says its name. So let's think about the different long vowel sounds. There's the long E sound, E, like in meet, feast, niece, receive, happy. The Y at the end says the long E sound in happy. But look at all the different spellings. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but lots of different spellings for the long E sound. So for number 9, pause the video and think of another word with a long E sound, E. The other long vowel sounds might be considered diphthongs. We're going to just categorize them as long vowel sounds. We'll talk more about the diphthongs or glided vowels later, but here we're just going to categorize these songs as long vowel sounds, even though in many dialects they might be glided or diphthongized. So there's the long O, like in oats and hope. Again, look at the different spellings. And for number 10, think of another word with a long O sound, O. The long U sound, U as in June, unicorn, U. For number 11, pause the video, think of another word with the long U sound, U. For the long I sound, I, like in ice, might, my. We hear that long I sound. The I says its name. For number 12, pause the video and think of another word with a long I sound. Then there's the long A, as in 8 and male. Look at the different spellings. Those are the most common for the long A sound. For number 13, pause the video and think of another word that has the long A sound. So let's think about spellings for that long A sound. or sorry, the long vowel sound, not just A, any long vowel sound. As you've seen in previous examples, a lot of times that is spelled when there are two vowels together. The little saying that we have for that is when two vowels go walking, the first one does the talking. So in the word plane, there are two vowels together, A-I, but the first one says its name. So the first one does the talking, the A. We hear the long A sound, plane. In the word meet, we have two vowels together, so a vowel pair, E-A, but the first one, the E, makes the long sound. It says its name. The first one does the talking, so we hear a long E, meet. In the word play, we have two vowels or potential vowels, with the Y being a potential vowel, so A-Y is the vowel pair. The first one does the talking or says its name, A. So we hear the long A sound in the word play. So for number 14, pause the video and think of another word with a vowel pair that makes a long vowel sound, any of the vowels. Just a long vowel sound where the vowel says its name. And there are two vowel letters together, making that long vowel sound. So there are many exceptions, but the vowel pairs are reasonably reliable for making the long sound of the vowel. Another way that we typically get the long vowel sound is where there's a silent E at the end of a word. And so the E is considered silent or a marker. Like in the words bite, the E doesn't make a sound. It tells the I to say its name. So sometimes it's called the bossy E. And it reaches over the consonant and says, say your name. So in bite, the E just reaches over to the I and says, say your name. The word is bite. We hear the long I, ite, bite sound. In the word ate, you hear the long A sound. The bossy E reaches over the T and tells the A to say its name. In the word flute, this one's a little tricky. It's not really a true U sound, more of an oo sound, but the bossy E reaches over and tells the U to say its name. So think of another word with a vowel and silent E that makes the long vowel sound. There are many exceptions, but again, the relationships are reasonably reliable for that silent E pattern. Another way we get the long vowel sound is if the vowel is at the end of a syllable or word. We call that the CV pattern, consonant vowel. Consonant starts with C, vowel starts with V, so it's called the CV pattern. Like I and we and try, where the vowel is at the end of the word and thus the end of the syllable, and so it says the long sound. Tomato, again, that might be pronounced different depending on your dialect, but everybody says the O at the end of tomato. We say the long O sound. Regionally, we might say that middle A differently. Some say tomato instead of tomato, but again, that depends on where the syllable's divided, and that is a regional thing. But typically, when we have a vowel at the end of a syllable or word, it's going to say its name. It's going to make the long sound. So for number 16, pause the video and think of another word with an open syllable or a word that ends in a vowel where the vowel makes the long sound. Again, there are many exceptions, but the relationship with the open syllable making a long vowel sound is reasonably reliable. There are also other patterns that make the long vowel sound. For example, the IGH as in night and sigh. So pause the video, and for number 7, think of another word with a vowel plus consonant letter combination that makes a long vowel sound. Again, many exceptions to all of these rules about long vowel sounds, but these relationships are reasonably reliable.